Picture this: a quiet neighborhood street, the sound of roaring motorcycle engines cutting through the peaceful atmosphere, and a group of leather-clad bikers pulling up to confront what they assume is just another ordinary middle-aged man. Little do they know, they're about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. The man standing before them isn't just anyone. He's Rocky Balboa, the Italian stallion himself, a legendary boxer who has faced down some of the most fearsome opponents in the ring. This story has captivated audiences worldwide, reminding us that you should never judge a book by its cover, and more importantly, never underestimate someone based on appearances alone. What do you think went through those bikers' minds when they realized who they were messing with? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone severely underestimate another person? Share your story. We want to hear it. The art of intimidation has long been a tool used by those who rely on fear to get their way. In the case of these bikers confronting Rocky Balboa, they employed every classic intimidation tactic in the book. The roar of their motorcycle engines, the synchronized arrival of multiple riders, the leather jackets adorned with patches signifying their gang affiliation, all of these elements were carefully calculated to inspire fear and submission in their target. They had likely used these same tactics hundreds of times before with great success, watching as ordinary citizens cowered and complied with their demands. What these bikers failed to understand, however, is that true strength doesn't announce itself with loud engines and aggressive posturing. Rocky Balboa, standing there in his casual clothes, probably looking tired from a day of work or training, represented something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. His power came from years of discipline, countless hours in the gym, and battles fought against world-class athletes who had dedicated their entire lives to the art of combat. While the bikers had cultivated an image of toughness, Rocky had forged genuine strength through blood, sweat, and tears. The psychology behind intimidation is fascinating. It relies heavily on the victim's perception of danger and their assessment of the threat level. The bikers assessed Rocky based on superficial characteristics: his age, his unassuming demeanor, perhaps his modest clothing. They made the fatal error of assuming that because he didn't present himself as a threat, he wasn't one. This is a mistake that has been made throughout history, from underestimating quiet warriors to dismissing humble champions. The most dangerous people are often those who have nothing to prove because they've already proven everything that matters. Rocky's career had taught him something invaluable. Real confidence doesn't need advertisement. He had faced Apollo Creed, Clubber Lang, and Ivan Drago, men who had tried to break him both physically and mentally. He had been knocked down more times than most people could count, yet he always got back up. This resilience, this inner steel, was completely invisible to the bikers who saw only an ordinary man standing in their way. They couldn't see the championship belts, the legendary fights, or the warrior's spirit that had carried Rocky through impossible odds. The contrast between perceived power and actual power has never been more stark. The bikers represented theatrical aggression, all show and spectacle designed to overwhelm through psychological pressure. Rocky represented practical strength, the kind that comes from legitimate training, real combat experience, and the mental fortitude developed through years of facing genuine adversity. One was a performance meant to frighten. The other was a reality that didn't need announcing. Do you think the bikers should have recognized Rocky? Would you have stepped up or stepped back in his situation? Let us know in the comments. What's the most intimidating situation you've ever found yourself in? To understand the magnitude of the biker's mistake, we must first appreciate who Rocky Balboa truly is. Rocky isn't just a boxer. He's an American icon, a symbol of perseverance, and a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome insurmountable odds. His story began in the tough streets of Philadelphia, where he worked as a small-time boxer and debt collector, struggling to make ends meet. He was a nobody with a dream that seemed impossible: to become somebody, to matter, to prove that he wasn't just another bum from the neighborhood. When Rocky got his shot at the heavyweight championship against Apollo Creed, nobody gave him a chance. The fight was supposed to be a publicity stunt, an easy payday for the champion against a local underdog. But Rocky shocked the world by going the distance, lasting all 15 rounds against one of the greatest boxers of all time. Although he lost that first fight on points, he won something far more valuable: respect, dignity, and proof that he belonged in the ring with the best. That night, Rocky Balboa transformed from a nobody into a legend. But Rocky's journey didn't end there. He went on to win the heavyweight championship, defending it against challengers who pushed him to his absolute limits. Clubber Lang, a brutal and hungry fighter, knocked Rocky off his throne, teaching him that success without continued dedication leads to failure. Rocky had to rediscover his hunger, his eye of the tiger, training harder than ever before to reclaim what he had lost. This taught him that being a champion isn't about a single moment of glory. It's about consistent dedication and the willingness to fight for what you've earned. Perhaps Rocky's most legendary battle came against Ivan Drago, the Soviet Superman who had killed Rocky's friend Apollo Creed in the ring. Fighting in Moscow, behind enemy lines during the Cold War, Rocky faced a fighter who had been scientifically engineered to be perfect, backed by technology and pharmaceutical enhancements. Yet Rocky, training in the frozen wilderness of Russia with nothing but primitive equipment and pure determination, managed to defeat this seemingly invincible opponent. This fight transcended sport. It became a symbol of human will triumphing over cold calculation, heart-defeating machinery. Throughout his career, Rocky accumulated an impressive record of victories, but more importantly, he accumulated wisdom. He learned that boxing isn't just about throwing punches. It's about strategy, endurance, reading your opponent, and most crucially, never giving up even when every fiber of your being wants to quit. These lessons extended far beyond the ring. Rocky became a mentor, a husband, a father, and a pillar of his community. His gym became a sanctuary for young fighters looking for guidance, and his story became an inspiration for millions around the world who faced their own impossible odds. The bikers who confronted Rocky that day had no idea they were standing before a man who had literally changed the sport of boxing. They didn't know about the training regimen that had him running up the Philadelphia Museum of Art steps, punching sides of beef and meat lockers and pushing his body beyond what medical science said was possible. They couldn't comprehend the mental toughness required to stand toe-to-toe with the world's most dangerous fighters and refuse to back down. They saw an aging man in street clothes. They didn't see the warrior who had proven time and again that determination and heart could overcome any obstacle. Can you name Rocky's toughest opponent? Which Rocky movie inspired you the most? Comment below with your favorite Rocky moment. If you could ask Rocky one question, what would it be? The psychology of gang behavior is complex and deeply rooted in human tribal instincts. When these bikers rolled up to confront Rocky, they weren't operating as individuals. They were functioning as a collective unit, drawing courage and confidence from their numbers. This pack mentality has been observed throughout human history, from ancient warrior tribes to modern street gangs. There's a primal comfort in belonging to a group, especially one that projects power and demands respect through intimidation rather than earning it through legitimate means. Motorcycle gangs specifically have cultivated a particular brand of intimidation that has proven remarkably effective over decades. The symbolism is unmistakable. The roar of powerful engines, the uniform appearance of leather and patches, the coordinated movements that suggest military-like discipline and loyalty. These elements combine to create an aura of danger that causes most people to simply get out of the way. The bikers have learned that they rarely need to actually follow through on implied threats because the intimidation itself usually achieves their goals. People see the group approaching and make the rational decision to avoid conflict. However, this reliance on group intimidation creates a dangerous vulnerability. When individuals derive their confidence primarily from the group's perceived power rather than their own legitimate abilities, they become prone to spectacular miscalculations. Each biker in the group likely felt individually invincible because of the backup surrounding them. They had probably never encountered serious resistance because the very sight of their gang was enough to make people comply. This created a false sense of their own capabilities and led them to believe they could intimidate anyone, regardless of that person's actual abilities. The hierarchical structure within motorcycle gangs also played a role in this confrontation. There are leaders who must maintain their position through displays of dominance, and there are followers who must prove their loyalty by backing up the leader's aggressive actions. When the decision was made to confront Rocky, it's likely that no individual biker would have taken such action alone. But within the group dynamic, there's pressure to conform, to show no weakness, to demonstrate that you're committed to the gang's code. Backing down or showing hesitation can be interpreted as betrayal or cowardice, which carries severe social consequences within the gang structure. What the bikers didn't understand is that numerical superiority doesn't guarantee victory, especially against someone with Rocky's level of training and experience. A professional boxer is trained to handle movement, angles, and multiple threats. The sweet science of boxing isn't just about throwing powerful punches. It's about footwork, positioning, timing, and the ability to read and react to aggression. Rocky had spent his entire adult life training to face opponents who were trying to knock him unconscious. Some bikers posturing aggressively represented a threat level far below what he faced every day in the gym, let alone in championship fights. Moreover, there's a significant difference between being willing to fight and being skilled at fighting. The bikers might have had plenty of brawling experience from bar fights and street confrontations, but these chaotic encounters bear little resemblance to the disciplined violence of professional boxing. An untrained person throwing wild punches is at an enormous disadvantage against someone who has thrown millions of technically precise punches under the guidance of expert trainers. The bikers' confidence was built on intimidating regular people, not on actually testing their fighting skills against trained combat athletes. The group mentality also meant that when the confrontation began to go wrong, panic could spread quickly through the gang. The first biker to realize they had made a terrible mistake would communicate that fear to the others, either through words or through the universal language of getting knocked down. The psychological advantage they thought they had would evaporate instantly, replaced by the terrifying realization that their numbers meant nothing against someone who genuinely knew how to fight. The very group dynamics that gave them false confidence would become a liability as confusion and fear rippled through their ranks. Have you ever seen someone's tough guy act crumble when they realize they picked the wrong target? Share your stories below. Do you think group intimidation works on people with real training? Let's debate in the comments. In any confrontation, the element of surprise can be the most decisive factor. And in this encounter, Rocky Balboa held all the surprise cards while the bikers held none. They approached him with their standard playbook, expecting the usual reaction of fear and submission they had come to expect from civilians. What they couldn't anticipate was that the man before them had been surprise tested by some of the greatest fighters in boxing history. Rocky's entire career had been built on being underestimated, and he had turned that disadvantage into his greatest strength. The psychology of surprise in combat cannot be overstated. When you expect one outcome and receive another, there's a moment of cognitive dissonance where your brain struggles to process the unexpected reality. The bikers expected Rocky to show fear, to back down, perhaps to plead or negotiate. Instead, they likely saw something in his eyes that fighters recognize immediately. The look of someone who has been in real fights, who has tasted their own blood and kept moving forward, who has experienced pain that would break most people and come out stronger. This realization, when it came, would have been profoundly unsettling. Rocky had learned early in his career that being underestimated was actually an advantage. Against Apollo Creed in their first fight, nobody expected him to survive, let alone compete. This lack of expectation meant Creed wasn't fully prepared for Rocky's relentless pressure and unconventional style. Against Clubber Lang, after Rocky lost his eye of the tiger, it was the surprise of his renewed dedication and different training approach that allowed him to reclaim victory. Throughout his career, Rocky had turned the element of surprise into a tactical weapon, and these bikers were about to become the latest victims of their own assumptions. The specific surprise these bikers experienced was multi-layered. First, there was the surprise of resistance itself. Rocky didn't back down or show fear. Second, there was the surprise of competence. When Rocky moved, he moved with the precision and efficiency of a trained fighter. Third, there was the surprise of power. A boxer's punch, thrown with proper technique, is devastatingly different from a regular person's punch. Professional boxers generate force through their entire kinetic chain, from the legs through the hips and torso, culminating in a fist that arrives with the weight of their whole body behind it. The first biker to experience this would have been shocked by the sheer physics of what hit them. Moreover, Rocky's surprise factor was amplified by his age and appearance. These bikers likely assumed that even if he had been tough in his youth, age would have diminished his abilities. This is another fatal miscalculation. While it's true that fighters lose some physical attributes with age, experienced boxers compensate with superior technique, timing, and ring intelligence. An older Rocky Balboa with decades of experience was still far more dangerous than young, untrained brawlers with energy, but no skill. Age had given Rocky something the bikers didn't have, the wisdom to fight smart, not just hard. The element of surprise also affected the bikers' group cohesion. Their intimidation strategy relied on everyone playing their role in the theater of aggression. When Rocky's unexpected resistance disrupted the script, it created confusion within their ranks. The bikers in the back of the pack probably couldn't immediately see what was happening, but they could sense the change in energy, the disruption of their well-rehearsed intimidation routine. This uncertainty would have spread through the group like a virus, undermining their collective confidence and turning their numerical advantage into a chaotic liability. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of the surprise element was what it revealed about character. The bikers had built their identity on being tough, on being the ones who surprised and intimidated others. But when faced with genuine toughness, the kind forged in championship rings under the brightest lights against the most dangerous opponents, their theatrical version of masculinity was exposed as hollow. Rocky didn't need to announce his credentials or threaten violence. His quiet confidence and readiness spoke volumes, and the surprise on the bikers' faces when they realized their mistake must have been a sight to behold. What do you think Rocky's first move was when the confrontation started? Comment your predictions. Have you ever surprised someone who underestimated you? Tell us your underdog story below. The difference between street fighting and professional boxing is as vast as the difference between playing pickup basketball and competing in the NBA. When these bikers confronted Rocky Balboa, they were bringing knife-fighting skills to a gunfight, and they had no comprehension of the technical chasm that separated their abilities from his. Understanding this gap is crucial to appreciating just how badly outmatched these bikers were, regardless of their numbers or their confidence. Professional boxing is a science that has been refined over centuries. Every aspect of a boxer's movement is trained, from the positioning of their feet to the rotation of their hips, from the angle of their shoulders to the path of their punches. Rocky would have spent countless hours on fundamental drills, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, repeating these movements thousands upon thousands of times until they became as natural as breathing. This muscle memory means that in a confrontation, a boxer doesn't have to think about how to throw a punch. Their body simply executes the movement with maximum efficiency and power. In contrast, street fighters typically rely on wild, looping punches thrown with arm strength alone. These haymakers might look impressive and can certainly hurt an untrained opponent, but against someone with defensive training, they're slow, telegraphed, and leave massive openings for counterattacks. A professional boxer like Rocky would see these punches coming from a mile away. He'd slip, bob, weave, or simply step back, making his attacker miss while perfectly positioned to deliver his own devastating counter. For every wild swing a biker threw, Rocky could land 3 or 4 precise damaging punches. The footwork difference alone would have been decisive. Boxers learn to move on the balls of their feet, maintaining balance while being able to quickly change direction, advance, retreat, or circle. This mobility makes them extremely difficult targets, while allowing them to control distance and angles. Street fighters, conversely, often plant their feet to throw powerful punches, leaving them stationary and vulnerable. Rocky could have circled away from the bikers' attacks, picked his shots, and hit them from angles they weren't prepared to defend. Professional footwork turns a fight into a chess match where only one player knows how the pieces move. Defensive skills represent another massive advantage for trained boxers. Rocky had been hit by world-class punchers, men who had dedicated their lives to developing knockout power. He had learned to roll with punches, to turn his head at the last moment to reduce impact, to keep his hands up protecting his face, to tuck his chin to protect his jaw. These defensive techniques are second nature to professional boxers but completely foreign to street fighters. While the bikers would be taking shots flush on the chin, Rocky would be minimizing damage even when punches landed, and more often making them miss entirely. The conditioning factor cannot be overlooked. Professional boxers train their cardiovascular systems to extraordinary levels. Rocky's famous training montages, running upstairs, hitting the heavy bag for rounds, sparring session after session, all built an engine that could maintain high-level performance even when exhausted. Street fighters might come in hot with adrenaline, throwing everything they have in the first 30 seconds, but once that initial burst fades, their arms become heavy, their breathing labored, and their movements slow. Rocky could fight at a high pace for 3-minute rounds with only 1-minute breaks for 12 rounds. These bikers would be gassed within minutes, Power generation is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect. People see boxers who aren't particularly large and assume they can't hit that hard. This is a fatal error. Boxers learn to generate power through technique, driving off the back foot, rotating the hips, snapping the shoulder, landing with the first two knuckles at the optimal angle. When all these elements combine correctly, the result is shocking power from what might appear to be a casual punch. Rocky's straight right hand, thrown with championship-level technique, would hit like a sledgehammer, capable of instantly ending the involvement of anyone it connected with cleanly. Do you think one professional boxer could handle multiple street fighters? Drop your opinion below. What's the biggest misconception about boxing versus street fighting? Educate us in the comments. There must have been a specific moment when the terrible truth dawned on the bikers. A moment when swagger turned to uncertainty, when confidence crumbled into fear, when they realized they had made a catastrophic error in judgment. This moment of realization is both fascinating from a psychological perspective and deeply satisfying from a narrative standpoint. The hunters suddenly understanding they had cornered a lion, not a lamb, represents a complete reversal of power dynamics that must have been profoundly shocking for everyone involved. The realization probably didn't come all at once for the entire group. Most likely, the bikers who were directly engaging with Rocky figured it out first. In the split second when they threw their first punch and found it slipping harmlessly past Rocky's head, followed immediately by a counter that made their knees buckle and stars dance in their vision. That kind of wake-up call, getting hit by someone who really knows how to hit, is unforgettable. It's a bone-deep understanding that you're in serious trouble, that you've wandered into waters far deeper than you can swim. For some of the bikers in the back of the pack, the realization might have come from watching their friends, men they considered tough, men they had seen win bar fights and street brawls, suddenly looking helpless and overmatched. There's a particular kind of fear that comes from seeing someone you consider strong being dominated. It shatters your frame of reference and forces you to recalibrate your understanding of the situation. If Big Mike, who has never backed down from anyone, is struggling, what chance do I have? This is the thought that would have spread through the gang like wildfire. The physical evidence would have been undeniable. When professional boxers hit people, it looks different. There's a crispness to the impact, a sound that's distinctive, that clean smack of knuckles finding their target with technical precision. The person hit doesn't just get pushed back. They often drop, their legs betraying them, their equilibrium shattered. The bikers would have seen this and immediately understood they weren't dealing with a regular person. This wasn't a scared civilian trying to flail and defend themselves. This was someone who had been in hundreds of rounds in the ring, whose hands were registered weapons in every meaningful sense. Recognition might have played a role as well. Perhaps one of the bikers suddenly placed Rocky's face, remembering seeing him on television, remembering the legendary fights, the championship belts, the iconic status. Oh my God, that's Rocky Balboa. This verbal recognition, shouted in panic, would have spread the realization instantly through the group. Suddenly, everything made sense. The confidence in his stance, the precision of his movements, the devastating power of his punches. They had picked a fight with a legend, and legends become legendary for a reason. The moment of realization would also have included the understanding that retreat was necessary but dangerous. In gang culture, backing down is often considered worse than losing a fight. But continuing to engage with someone of Rocky's caliber meant guaranteed physical harm. The bikers would have been caught in a terrible dilemma. Their culture demanded they stand and fight, but their survival instinct screamed at them to get out before suffering serious injury. This internal conflict playing out in real time while Rocky calmly assessed which of them represented the next threat must have been psychologically agonizing. The emotional cocktail of this realization would have been complex. Embarrassment at being so thoroughly outclassed, fear of the immediate physical danger, anger at themselves for the miscalculation, and perhaps even a grudging respect for the man who stood before them. Rocky wasn't being cruel or excessive. He was simply handling the situation with the efficiency of someone who had faced far more dangerous threats. This professional composure, this lack of ego or need to humiliate them, might have actually made the realization worse. They weren't being beaten by someone who had descended to their level. They were being managed by someone operating on a completely different plane. What do you think went through their heads when they realized who he was? Comment below. If you were one of the bikers, at what point would you have backed off? Let us know your take. The aftermath of the biker's confrontation with Rocky Balboa would extend far beyond any physical injuries sustained during the encounter. The real damage would be to their egos, their carefully constructed self-image, and their understanding of their place in the hierarchy of toughness. This kind of humbling experience can either break people or teach them valuable lessons, depending on their willingness to learn from their mistakes. For some of these bikers, this would become a defining moment that fundamentally changed how they approached conflict and assessed potential adversaries. The immediate aftermath would likely involve the bikers retreating, perhaps helping their injured friends, and processing what had just happened. The adrenaline would still be coursing through their systems, but now mixed with the bitter taste of defeat and humiliation. These men had built their identities around being intimidating and dominant, and in a matter of minutes, that entire self-conception had been shattered. They would need to somehow reconcile the image they had of themselves with the reality of what just occurred. This cognitive dissonance can be deeply unsettling and forces uncomfortable self-reflection. Within the gang itself, there would be repercussions. The leader who decided to confront Rocky would face questions about judgment and decision-making. How could they not have recognized who they were dealing with? Why didn't they do more research before starting a confrontation? In gang culture, where reputation is everything, this kind of public failure can lead to challenges to leadership or loss of status within the group. Other members would be evaluating whether they wanted to continue following someone whose judgment led them into such a spectacular miscalculation. The story would inevitably spread beyond the immediate participants. In the age of smartphones, someone might have recorded parts of the encounter, or at minimum the bikers themselves would tell others about what happened. The tale of how a biker gang tried to intimidate Rocky Balboa and got more than they bargained for would become legendary in local circles. This kind of story has legs because it contains all the elements of a perfect narrative: overconfidence, miscalculation, and justice served to those who tried to bully someone they thought was defenseless. The bikers would become the punchline of their own story. On a deeper level, this experience offers profound lessons about respect and humility. The bikers had operated under the assumption that respect could be demanded through intimidation and force. Rocky's example demonstrated a different truth. Real respect is earned through genuine accomplishment, through overcoming legitimate challenges, through discipline and dedication to excellence. Rocky didn't need to intimidate anyone. His reputation and actual abilities spoke for themselves. This is a lesson that transcends fighting and applies to all areas of life. Substance matters more than style, character more than image. The encounter would also serve as a reminder about the dangers of judging people by appearances. The bikers saw an unassuming middle-aged man and assumed weakness. They failed to look deeper, to consider that people contain multitudes, that quiet confidence often indicates genuine capability, while loud posturing usually masks insecurity. This lesson, that you never truly know what someone is capable of until you test them, is one that wise people learn without needing to learn it the hard way. Unfortunately for these bikers, they chose the hard way. For Rocky himself, this encounter would likely be just another Tuesday. He had faced down far more dangerous threats in his life, and had long since proven everything he needed to prove. He didn't need to defeat some bikers to feel validated or powerful. If anything, he might have felt disappointed that the situation escalated to physical confrontation at all. Rocky's character had always been about more than just fighting. It was about heart, determination, and standing up for what's right without seeking violence for its own sake. The broader lesson for society is equally important. This story resonates because it represents a kind of cosmic justice. Bullies getting their comeuppance, the underdog, even though Rocky was never really the underdog in this situation, prevailing, the righteous being vindicated. We love these stories because they remind us that intimidation and posturing are hollow, that genuine strength doesn't need to advertise itself, and that people who build their identity on making others afraid are ultimately cowards who avoid challenging anyone who can actually fight back. What lesson do you think the bikers learned from this? Comment your thoughts. Have you ever learned a hard lesson about respecting others? Share your story below. The story of bikers unwittingly threatening Rocky Balboa transcends its immediate entertainment value and speaks to deeper truths about human nature, respect, and the difference between appearance and reality. This narrative has captured public imagination because it serves as a perfect morality tale for our times, a reminder that in an age of social media posturing and carefully curated tough guy images, genuine substance still matters. The story's enduring appeal lies in its simplicity and the universal lessons it imparts to anyone willing to listen. First and foremost, this story is about the importance of humility. The biker's fundamental error was not a tactical miscalculation, but a failure of character. They approached Rocky with the arrogance that comes from consistently facing people who are afraid of them. They had never developed the humility that comes from truly testing yourself against worthy opponents, from experiencing genuine defeat, from understanding the limits of your own abilities. Rocky, conversely, had learned humility through countless hard-fought battles. He knew what it was to be knocked down, to face opponents who were faster, stronger, or more skilled. This humility made him dangerous, because he never underestimated anyone, never assumed victory, and never relied on intimidation rather than skill. The story also illuminates the difference between being tough and acting tough. Our culture is saturated with performances of toughness, from reality TV shows to social media posturing to the casual aggression that permeates much of modern discourse. The bikers represented this performative toughness taken to its logical extreme. They had the costumes, the props, motorcycles, the group dynamic, and the willingness to threaten violence. What they lacked was the substance, the actual skills, training, and tested ability that constitutes genuine toughness. Rocky embodied real toughness, the kind that comes from pushing yourself beyond your limits, from refusing to quit when every instinct screams at you to stop, from standing up when you've been knocked down again and again. This narrative serves as a powerful reminder about respect and how it's earned. The bikers wanted respect without earning it. They confused fear with respect and believed that making people afraid of them was equivalent to being respected. Rocky understood that respect comes from what you've actually accomplished, from the obstacles you've overcome, from the character you demonstrate when facing adversity. You can't demand respect through intimidation. You can only earn it through action, through consistency, through proving yourself in legitimate tests. This lesson applies far beyond physical confrontations. It's relevant in business, relationships, parenting, and every area where people interact and evaluate each other. The story's viral nature speaks to our collective hunger for narratives where justice prevails and bullies receive their comeuppance. We love these stories because they provide a cathartic release from our own experiences of powerlessness, from times when we or others were intimidated or pushed around by those who seemed stronger. When the bikers threat Rocky and discover they've made a terrible mistake, it's satisfying on a primal level. It confirms our belief that the universe has some balance, that people who prey on the weak will eventually encounter someone they can't intimidate. That genuine ability trumps performance every time. Moreover, this story has become legendary because it features a beloved cultural icon. Rocky Balboa isn't just a boxer. He's an American myth, a symbol of perseverance and the belief that anyone can overcome their circumstances through hard work and determination. When bikers threaten Rocky, they're not just threatening an individual, they're threatening an idea, a symbol of everything we aspire to be. Rocky's response, calm, competent, and proportional, reinforces why he became an icon in the first place. He doesn't need to prove anything, his legacy speaks for itself. The enduring legacy of this story lies in its simplicity and universal applicability. It teaches us to look deeper than surface appearances, to respect quiet competence over loud posturing, to value substance over style, and to remember that everyone has a story we might not know. The bikers who threatened Rocky learned these lessons the hard way. The rest of us can learn them by paying attention to their mistake. In a world that increasingly values performance over authenticity, stories like this remind us that when the performance ends and reality intrudes, it's what you've actually built, in skill, in character, in genuine accomplishment, that determines the outcome. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? Share in the comments. How has Rocky Balboa inspired you in your own life? We want to hear your Rocky story. Tag someone who needs to hear this lesson about respect and humility. The tale of bikers threatening Rocky Balboa, unaware of who they were confronting, will live on as a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging by appearances and the importance of respect. It reminds us that true strength doesn't announce itself, that legends are made through action, not words, and that the most dangerous opponents are often those who have nothing left to prove. Rocky Balboa's legacy extends far beyond boxing. It's about character, perseverance, and the quiet confidence that comes from having faced your fears and emerged victorious. Before you go, tell us, what's your favorite Rocky moment of all time? Which fight was the most inspiring to you? And most importantly, would you ever challenge someone without knowing their background? Drop all your thoughts below, and let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder to stay humble.